Hello, I'm Desdemona Carter, 28 years old, and clearly not thriving, despite what my curated Instagram grid might suggest. I own this tragically adorable little cafe called Memory Lane, plunked right in the middle of Starbridge, a blink-and-you'll-miss-it town drowning in Greg's bags and decades of unresolved family tension. It's one of those places where the sky looks like a half-arsed watercolor painting, and everyone knows each other's names, secrets, and bowel habits. Most folks around here are so predictable, I can tell their order the moment they waddle through my door. Maggie from the bookshop? Weak tea and a custard tart. Neil from the post office? Flat white and disappointment. To anyone else, this village is just beige. But for me, it's where I sort of reluctantly found myself. After years of pretending, I wasn't slowly dying inside in the bosom of the Carter household. Anyway, today's one of those sweater weather days everyone romanticizes until the British damp sets in and ruins your shoes. The air smells like wet leaves, burnt toast, and the slow decay of optimism. I'm sat by the front window of my cafe, my little pride and trauma, at a rickety wooden table that's definitely seen more breakups than sponge cakes. Outside, a couple of knackered lorries thunder down the high street like they've got somewhere to be and nothing to lose. Inside, I've got a cup of coffee that could probably strip paint, and this dusty old box I pulled out from the back room after a heroic, passive-aggressive cleaning spree. I didn't mean to open it, honestly. But trauma's a sneaky cow, isn't it? So here I am, sat like some deranged curator of my own misery, cracking open a box of feelings and instantly getting smacked in the face with the scent of moldy paper and unresolved emotional damage. Inside, photos. All jumbled up, slightly sticky, don't ask, half of them yellowed like they've got jaundice. Some barely holding it together, same babes. There's one of me and Abby, my sister, both about 5, wearing matching red jumpers like some sort of creepy Christmas advert. Grins from ear to ear, completely unaware of the years of therapy ahead. Then I pull out the classic, my mom and stepdad, Karen and Philip Carter. The original emotionally unavailable duo. Both dressed up like they're auditioning for a BBC drama about middle-class misery. Her in pearls, him in his I pay too much for golf suit. Their smiles say, happy family, but their eyes scream, we only touch elbows at Christmas. And then just like that, I find her. My gran. Edith Carter. The only person in my life who didn't make me feel like I was an inconvenience in my own story. It's a small, worn photo, one of those grainy ones taken outside someone's house where everyone's pretending not to be freezing. We were outside Uncle Malcolm's place, which, side note, smelt like a mixture of boiled cabbage and cat piss, and no one ever mentioned it. She's wearing that god-awful forest green jumper she loved. Hair pinned up like she's about to host songs of praise. And even with the cataracts and the ancient spectacles, there's still that glint in her eye, like she knew I was full of it but loved me anyway. I must have been 16, 17? I'm stood next to her, gripping her hand like my life depended on it.
Smile forced.
Shoulders tense, like someone told me to look happy, or else. And something about that photo cuts
Deep.
like someone opened a trapdoor in my chest. Suddenly, I'm back there.
The airport.
Gran standing there, bless her, confused and adorable in her little wool hat and Marks and Sparks coat. Her hands gripping mine, shaking slightly, and her voice, soft but shaking with worry, says, "You'll come back for me, won't you, love?" I was 18. Barely knew how to use a washing machine, let alone navigate abandonment issues and check-in queues. My stepdad had said, in that breezy, dickhead way of his, "Just sit here, Edith. We'll be back after check-in." Reader, he lied. We never came back. Or at least, they didn't. I hovered like an absolute wreck, torn between leaving with my emotionally constipated family or staying with the only person who ever looked at me like I wasn't a disappointment in jeggings. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Just knew I couldn't stomach the idea of her sat there alone, in that sterile, beeping airport, surrounded by strangers and fluorescent lighting, waiting for a "we'll be back" that was never coming. Back in the cafe, I take a gulp of coffee, so bitter it matches my soul. I grab an old notebook from my coat pocket, battered, wine-stained, smells faintly of despair, and flip to a blank page. I'm not a writer. I can't even spell, occasionally, without second-guessing myself. But something inside me, the small, brave bit that somehow survived the Carter family's emotional frostbite, wants to tell this story.
Not to blame.
Not to be dramatic. Well, not entirely. But to remember. Because that moment, where I stood in an airport, 18 years old, watching my grand shrink into a sea of strangers, that's when everything shifted. That's when I stopped trying to earn love I already had, and started clawing my way towards something resembling a life. And now, here I am. A woman with dodgy bangs, caffeine shakes, and a cafe full of pensioners who think oat milk is a conspiracy. But still, I made it. Sort of.
So yeah.
This is the story of a girl,
A gran.
and a stepdad who can sod right off, right? So, I grew up in Lincolnshire because of course I did. About 3 hours from the place I'm in now, and honestly, every time I think of Lincoln, my entire nervous system sighs. It's technically a city, but not the fun kind. More like the sort of place where nothing ever happens except passive-aggressive bake sales and people judging your bin day routine. We lived in one of those aggressively respectable estates. You know the ones, identical white detached houses, every lawn trimmed within an inch of its life, and the kind of neighbors who notice if your recycling bin isn't facing the right direction. It was all so pristine it felt like living inside a Dulux advert, except instead of love and laughter, you got silent dinners and a mild sense of dread. My stepdad, Philip, who looked like he'd been manufactured in a lab to sell car insurance, was a financial officer. Always in a suit. Always correcting people. He spoke like he was on a conference call even when he was telling you off for not using a coaster. And God, did he love a monologue. Especially about how he'd started with nothing and now owned a house, a hybrid car, and 2 daughters who didn't speak unless spoken to. My mom, Karen, was a nurse and not in the cuddly, tea and toast NHS angel way. Nah, she was the clipboard kind. Always working. Always serious. Always folding napkins like she was entering a competition. The only time she ever smiled was in family photos, and even then, it looked like her teeth had signed a hostage agreement. And then there was Abby, 3 years younger than me, quiet as a mouse, heart made of sponge cake. The kind of girl who apologizes when you bump into her. We were close, I suppose, but in a weird, cautious way. Like 2 kids on a seesaw afraid to admit it's actually broken. We tiptoed around each other, around our parents, around ourselves. From the outside, absolute picture of middle-class perfection. Top grades, polite daughters, matching cardigans. You'd think we were sponsored by Bloody John Lewis. But inside, the house had all the warmth of a fridge. Everything perfectly placed, like a showroom no one was allowed to live in. Silence echoing through the halls. Expectations heavier than the family SUV. I wasn't a kid, I was a project. Philip, sorry, stepdad, was big on this whole respect your elders bit. Constantly rattling on about gratitude, discipline, sacrifice. How we owed him and Mum for the life they'd worked so hard to give us. But when his own mother rang Grand Edith, bless her, he dodged the call like it was a cold call from PPI. Every time she asked for help, he'd magically develop a work thing or a bit of a migraine. And every call would end the same, him huffing like she'd asked him to donate a kidney. I noticed, obviously. But I was, what, 14? 15? At that age, you're too busy trying not to breathe wrong in front of your parents to start interrogating their moral inconsistencies. Gran and Granddad lived just outside town on a little farm. Not like a tractor chase farm, just a few fields of wheat, a couple of cows, and a shed that somehow always smelled of apples and petrol. The place was modest. Old wallpaper, wobbly furniture. But it had love in the walls, like the kind that makes you feel safe just by sitting on the settee. Summers there were my personal escape plan. Granddad showed me how to plant runner beans and chase off foxes. Gran made the most absurdly perfect butter biscuits and told me stories from when she taught primary school. Her voice was soft, like someone wrapping you in a blanket, The opposite of Mom's stop slouching tone. And the best part? She always said I was her favorite. Now, maybe she told that to all the grandkids, but when she hugged me, I believed her. With her arms round me, it was like nothing could get me. Not even Karen's spreadsheet of household chores. But then life, being the relentless little gremlin it is, decided to pull the rug. Granddad died when I was 14. Heart attack. One of those ones that just happens. He was out feeding the chickens, then he wasn't. Simple. Final. Unfair. I remember that day too vividly. Sky was gray, like the universe couldn't be arsed. Bit of drizzle. The kind that gets in your bones. Gran sat in her armchair, clutching his photo like it might bring him back. Her eyes were bloodshot, but no tears. Like she'd run out. After that, she wasn't the same. Not even close. She started forgetting stuff, little things at first.
Names. Dates.
Whether she'd turn the kettle on. Then it got worse. She once called me Billy, which would have been fine if Billy wasn't a lad from her sixth form days who'd apparently crashed a scooter into a cow. Sometimes she'd just stand at the front door, staring down the lane like Granddad was going to come striding back with a basket of potatoes and a bad joke. And what did I do? Held her hand, made dumb jokes, tried not to cry. Because that's what you do, isn't it? When the people who raised you start drifting away, you cling on, even when your own family is too bloody busy to care.
Right.
So, apparently my stepdad reckons dementia is just one of those little life quirks, like losing your keys or stepping on a Lego.
She's old.
It's bound to happen. That's what he said. All calm, like he was reciting the shipping forecast. But I caught that flicker in his eye, not sadness, not even pity, just mild irritation. Like her forgetfulness was a personal inconvenience for him. Like her brain was glitching just to spite him. And my mum? Saintly silence. Always with the sighs. The long, exhausted ones that say, "This isn't my problem," without saying anything at all. Every time Grandma called, it was like someone had hit the snooze button on her empathy. Again. I was 15. At that awful in-between stage where you're too young to fix anything but old enough to notice everything's going to shit. So I just kept my head down and tried to be the good daughter, whatever the hell that means, while quietly watching the emotional cracks in my family form like hairline fractures in a crap council flat window. Fast forward a year. I'm 16, it's November, and we're driving up to Grandma's farmhouse in Derbyshire for some sort of sad, roast dinner-themed intervention. The place is about an hour out, middle of nowhere vibes. Think cows, cold wind, and fields so empty they could host a Radiohead music video. I'm crammed in the back next to my little sister Lucy, who's somehow still talking to her iPad like it's her therapist, and my stepdad and mum are in the front having this whisper-arguing thing they do. You know the type, where every sentence ends in a clenched jaw and someone turning the radio up passive-aggressively. We pull up and there she is.
Grandma.
Standing on the porch in that tatty green cardigan she's worn since the dawn of time, hair like a haystack and this distant look in her eyes, like she was expecting someone else, probably someone from 1983. I bolted out of the car and hugged her. And honestly, she still smelled like butter biscuits and comfort, which is impressive considering she's slowly forgetting who we are. "Desmond, love, you've grown," she said.
Desmond.
I'm not Desmond. I'm not even close to a Desmond. But I didn't correct her. I just held her hand, which felt like holding a cold teacup wrapped in tissue paper, and tried not to cry, because it was either that or scream into a Quality Street tin. Dinner was tense. It was us lot, plus Uncle Richard, my stepdad's brother, and his nightmare family from Leeds. He's got that "I work in construction and talk about it constantly" vibe. Think, permanently sunburnt nose, and one too many LinkedIn posts. Aunt Sharon, yes, Sharon, came and dressed like she thought she was going to a cocktail bar in Marbella, and their sons sat at the table playing on their phones like they'd forgotten human conversation was a thing. We're sat there, shoveling in Auntie Linda's soggy mash, when the mood shifts. Grandma's barely touched hers. Just picks it up, sniffs it, then sets the spoon down like it's radioactive. I tried chatting with her, asked about the cornfield out back, which probably doesn't even grow corn anymore, and she just looked at me, smiled, and went, "Billy, is that you?" I held her hand under the table again. Because what else can you do? Correct her? For what? So she can forget again 5 minutes later and feel worse? Then the bomb dropped. Uncle Richard, halfway through his third glass of Asda's finest red, pipes up, all soft and calculated. Mom, maybe it's time you sold the farm. It's not really safe you living out here alone. Translation: can you please sell the house so we can split the inheritance before you start hiding cutlery in the washing machine? My stepdad, who had been chewing like someone trying to suppress generational trauma, just put down his knife and fork like he was about to deliver a TED Talk on family disappointment. All right, Richard. If she sells the farm, are you going to take care of her?
Oop.
Tension. Forks freezing midair. Aunt Sharon nearly dropped her wine glass. Richard's eyes did that panicked blink men do when they've just been emotionally undressed in public. Mum sat next to stepdad, nodded in that performative, I'm backing you but I hate this kind of way. The kind that says, I've got your back but I'll complain about this in the car for an hour later. What followed was a passive-aggressive tug of war over Grandma's future. Neither of them wanted to look after her unless there was something in it for them. And then, Grandma, who had been quiet this whole time, just sort of drifting in and out like a dodgy Wi-Fi signal, suddenly looked up. Her eyes scanned the table, all misty and far away. Then, in that terrifyingly calm, I might be losing my marbles, but I still know how to make you all uncomfortable voice, she said. Stop arguing. Whoever takes care of me gets everything. The house, the land, the savings. The lot. The silence was instant, like someone had hit mute on a soap opera right before the big reveal. Stepdad's wine glass paused mid-sip. Richard's face twitched like he'd just lost a bet. Aunt Sharon went all wide-eyed like she'd just seen a Primark closing down sale. And me? I sat there holding Grandma's hand like I'd just watched her drop a grenade in the mashed potatoes. From that point on, it was game on. Suddenly, both stepdad and Richard were all, oh no, I insist, she should stay with us. And we've got better hospitals up in Leeds. And I already bought a stairlift off eBay, promise. Absolute 180. 1 minute, they were arguing about whose turn it was to call her once a fortnight, and now it was full-blown battle of the blokes for who got the golden goose. Grandma didn't say another word, just stared off into the distance like she'd already mentally left the chat. In the end, stepdad won. Because he's the eldest, and Mum's a nurse, so apparently that makes us some kind of free private care facility. Richard sulked, but nodded along like a man who knew he'd just lost the inheritance Olympics. A week later, Grandma moved into our place in Sheffield. She came with 2 suitcases, one framed photo of Granddad, who frankly had the right idea by dying early, and enough memories to fill a skip, most of which she'd started to lose anyway. And me? I just carried the bags and kept quiet. Because being a teenage girl in this family means you're expected to smile, nod, and pass the bloody gravy, even while everything around you falls apart.
Right.
So we're sat there, pretending to enjoy overcooked turkey and family tension, when Grandma, bless her ancient heart, pipes up, real slow, like she's casting a bloody spell. Whoever takes care of me gets everything. The land, the house, the savings, the insurance, all of it.
Dead silence.
You could hear a gravy boat drop. My stepdad, the great pretender, actually froze mid-sip, like someone had paused him with a remote. Uncle Derek, formerly Richard, now full Midlands menace, scowled like someone had just told him Greg's was out of sausage rolls. And Auntie Linda? She looked like she'd seen Jesus, and he was handing out scratch cards.
Me?
I was there clutching Grandma's hand like some tragic Victorian orphan, not fully clocking the weight of what she'd just said, but I felt it. Like the air had gone heavy and someone just lobbed a grenade onto the table with a little pink bow on it. Stepdad, because of course he did, goes, Mum, I'll take care of you. With this Oscar-winning and the noble eldest son tone, as if he hadn't spent the last 6 months trying to rehome her like a rescue cat. Mum nodded along beside him, like she was backing up a Tesco manager. Meanwhile, Uncle Derek tried to outnoble him with she'd be better off in Birmingham. We've got proper hospitals. Sure, Derek. And next you'll tell me she'll get her own suite at the Hilton. And just like that, they flipped. Before the money bombshell, they were playing hot potato with Grandma's future.
Now?
Suddenly, it's a bloody custody battle. Grandma's sitting there not saying a word, just gazing into the void like she's tuning into a spiritual frequency the rest of US can't hear. Spoiler, stepdad won. Naturally. He's the eldest, and Mom's a nurse, which suddenly makes us the care package deluxe option. Derek backed off eventually, grumbling something about doing what's best, but mostly I think Linda was fuming she didn't get to pick out new curtains for the farmhouse. So Grandma moved in the next week. Turned up with 3 worn-out suitcases, a dusty photo of Grandpa, and a head full of fog. She left the farm behind, and we left behind our last shred of peace and quiet. At first, it was all very BBC wholesome drama. Mom was booking GP appointments like she was her PA, taping medicine charts to the fridge. Stepdad was doing Sunday strolls with Grandma, buying her cardigans, bragging to the neighbors like he was son of the year. We just want what's best for her, he'd say, while mentally measuring the square footage of her land.
And I
was drafted into watching Midsummer Murders and talking to her about the good old days, which apparently now included her calling me Sophie, not my name, feeding the cat imaginary biscuits, and talking to Grandpa's photo like it owed her money. But then came the shift. The mood changed. Not dramatically, just like the heating breaking in winter. One night, I heard them arguing in the living room. Stepdad wanted to talk deeds.
property.
Money. And Mum, ever the queen of diplomacy, was all. She doesn't remember love. She talks about your dad like he's still in the shed. Stepdad didn't like that. Said Grandma was faking it. Called her calculating. As if she was running some long con from the back of her armchair. Next day, Mum brought home this psychologist bloke. Glasses, soft voice. One of those faces that makes you want to punch something out of pure politeness. He sits beside Grandma and starts gently probing. The farm, the money, the bank accounts. She gives him absolute nonsense in return. Talks about cows and biscuits and some lad named Colin. Not a clue what's real. Stepdad stood in the doorway like a mob boss, arms folded, trying not to look like he wanted to throttle everyone. After that, it was downhill. Mum started sighing whenever Grandma left crumbs on the table. Stepdad started doing that lovely thing where you humiliate someone under the guise of discipline, snapping at her for dropping tea, telling her to stop confusing people at family dinners. I'd catch Grandma just staring at the wall, not even blinking. Quiet. Like she knew exactly what was happening, but couldn't put the words together anymore. And me? I'm still here. Stuck in the middle of this tragic comedy, watching my family morph from a slightly dysfunctional sitcom to a full-blown Shakespearean tragedy with added cat piss and forgotten names. Right, so picture this. It's a random Tuesday, I've got college applications slowly turning my brain to soup, and what do I come home to? Grandma, sitting in the crusty old armchair that smells like mothballs and disappointment, folding a napkin like it holds the secret to life itself. Over and over. Her hands shaking like she's trying to Morse code a cry for help into the fabric. And I wanted to leg it over, wrap her up in a blanket burrito of love, and say, "Sod it all? Gran, I've got you."
But no.
Mother dearest yanks me back like I'm about to rob a bloody bank. "Don't indulge her too much. You've got revision," she says. Oh yes, God forbid I show a bit of humanity when there's yuccas forms breathing down my neck. The house was starting to feel less like a home and more like a prison built entirely of polite silence and unspoken resentment. Abby, my sister, the only other sane one in this domestic drama, was practically in witness protection in her room. Headphones in, diary out, pretending our parents didn't exist. Smart girl. Every time I tried to say something, anything, about how we were all slowly losing the plot, my mouth would seize up. Stepdad's terrifying eyebrow raise had a chokehold on me, and Mum's, "You're just a child" face?
Award-worthy.
I was 17, top of my class, practically raising myself, and yet still treated like I was too thick to understand emotional decay.
Now.
Let me take you to the night everything properly went tits up. Storm outside. Proper biblical vibes. Thunder, lightning, wind howling like a pissed-off fox. I'm in my room, pretending to revise but mostly stress-eating Jaffa cakes. Then Mum's CREMS from downstairs. She's gone. It's chucking it down.
Cue full panic.
I sprint downstairs like I'm auditioning for EastEnders, only to find Mum soaking wet, standing in the doorway with an umbrella in one hand and a look of pure rage in the other. Stepdad's on the phone, acting like this is MI5 level emergency.
Grandma? Missing.
She'd Houdini'd her way out the back door, no shoes, no coat, just Grandpa's photo clutched in her arthritic little hands. I didn't think. I just grabbed my knackered bike, chucked on the world's worst excuse for a raincoat, and bolted into the storm. Picture it. Me, mascara running like I'd just been dumped, pedaling through the sideways rain, knocking on doors like some deranged Avon lady. No one had seen her. Not a soul. My legs were jelly. My hair looked like it had been licked by a cow, and I was ready to scream into the void. But I didn't stop. Nearly an hour later, I swear time was moving backwards, I found her. Under this massive oak tree at the end of a dead-end road. Completely soaked, clutching Grandpa's photo like it was the last Horcrux. Her eyes were cloudy, her body trembling like she was made of paper. "Gran," I sobbed. She looked up and I swear it broke me, smiled and went, "Billy, you're back." Spoiler alert, I'm not Billy. But I didn't correct her. I just wrapped my arms around her and cried like an absolute muppet, my tears mixing with the rain, soaking her shoulder. I took off my raincoat, which, again, basically a glorified tissue, draped it over her and whispered, "Let's go home, Gran." She didn't say much, just looked out at the puddles like they were portals to a better life. I asked if she was cold, even though we were basically two drowned rats. She just mumbled, "Billy, where's he gone?" And there it was, that little punch in the gut, because Grandpa had been gone for years, and Billy, whoever he was, wasn't me. But in that moment, I wasn't about to correct her fragile reality. I just squeezed her hand and carried on cycling like I was ferrying a ghost. When we rolled up to the house, headlights on, front door swinging like a horror film, Mum was waiting, arms crossed, eyes sharper than a Sunday roast knife. Stepdad was still gripping his phone like he'd been in charge the whole time. Abby ran out, eyes puffy from crying, and hugged me like I'd just come back from war. "You found her," she whispered, and I nodded, like some tragic heroine, mascara smeared, clothes ruined, heart in bits. But Mum's look? Oh, it froze me solid. No thank you. No hug. Just that passive-aggressive face that said, "This is your fault somehow." And that was the moment I knew. I couldn't pretend anymore.
Couldn't stay quiet.
Couldn't let this house swallow us all whole in its perfect storm of denial, ambition, and emotional constipation. Because Grandma might have been fading, but I wasn't. And I was done watching her disappear while everyone else looked the other way. And yes, I still had to revise for my A-levels after all that. Because Britain is cruel like that. Mum, yes, Mum, not Mom, because this is Britain and we suffer in silence with proper grammar, is standing in the doorway, soaked like a miserable cat who's just remembered she's not the favorite child anymore. Grandma, sorry, Nana Edith, is dripping on the parquet floor like some tragic ghost from a rainy soap opera.
And me?
I'm there thinking, well, this is how my villain origin story starts. Mum. I started trying to keep the chaos inside my chest from leaking out of my eyeballs. She's freezing. Let me take her upstairs. But of course not. That would have been too sane. Too kind. Too unmum. "Edith, where have you been?" Mum barked, grabbing Nana's arm like she was about to shoplift from Tesco again. "Do you know the drama you've caused? I've missed my shift. Your stepdad's called the bloody police." "Oh, brilliant. Call Scotland Yard for a pensioner in a nightie. That'll go down well at the next street WhatsApp group gossip round." Nana looked up, bless her, all foggy-eyed and frail like a damp hobbit. "I was looking for George," she whispered, still clutching Grandad's photo like it held the last bit of her sanity. "And Mum? Well," she exhaled like we were all just stupid extras in her main character crisis. George is gone, Edith. He's been gone.
Don't start with this again.
Her voice was sharp enough to slice bread, and I snapped. Enough, I said, stepping in front of Nana like some over-caffeinated, underappreciated bodyguard. She's soaked. She's shaking. She didn't plan a field trip in the pissing rain, Mum. She's ill. And then, right on cue, enters stepdad Steve. With that cold look he saves for tax returns and telling you to be realistic about your dreams. "Oh, so now you're yelling at your mum, are you?" he said, like I'd just punched the queen. He stepped in, wagging his finger like I was 5 and had drawn on the walls with ketchup. "You've no idea the stress we're under. Do you know what it's like looking after her? You just sit upstairs studying, living off our money, acting like you know everything." "Oh, okay, so now it's a personal attack." "She's not a burden," I snapped, shaking, furious. "She's Nana. And if she was better off at the bloody farm, why did you drag her here just to make her feel like a stray dog? That did it." Silence. Mum blinked. Stepdad Steve looked like he was about to give me a lecture on respect and mobile phone bills. But before they could tag team the guilt trip, my sister, Abby, sweet disaster that she is, tugged my arm like a panicked rabbit. "Lena, stop," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please don't make it worse." Worse? Babe, we were already in the trenches of emotional warfare. This wasn't a family. This was a low-budget Greek tragedy. I looked at Abby, then at Nana. Still dripping, still holding that damn photo, still somewhere between here and wherever George had gone. And I realized, I don't care if I burn every bridge in this house. I'm getting her out of this corridor of doom. I took Nana upstairs. Mum muttered something. Steve grunted like the emotionally constipated man he is, and Abby just sat on the stairs like she wanted to disappear into the floorboards. Upstairs, I changed Nana out of her soaked nightie. She kept calling me Billy, and I didn't even correct her anymore. "I'm Lena," I whispered, drying her hair with a towel that still smelled like fabric softener and broken dreams. "I'm Lena, Nana." But she smiled that lost, faraway smile. Like she was back in a world where Granddad was still in the kitchen burning toast and humming Beatles songs. And I sat there, wiping rain and tears off both our faces, thinking, this house is killing her. And it's slowly killing me too. I sat beside Gran, listening to the rain finally piss off outside, and honestly, I felt like the last dry tea bag in a student flat. Utterly useless, but somehow still responsible for holding things together. She sat there all soggy and fragile, looking like a haunted tea towel, and I just thought, nope, I'm not having this. I can't let her carry on like this, like she's some tragic side character in a bad ITV drama. That night, I tried to sleep. Emphasis on tried. But instead, I got the joy of listening to my mum and stepdad Greg argue in surround sound. Classic blame ping pong. Mum was screeching that Greg was too soft on me. Hilarious, considering he's got the emotional range of a broken toaster. And he was biting back that she should keep a better eye on Gran. Proper mature stuff. I shoved a pillow over my head like it might actually drown them out. But nope. Their words sliced right through like a rusty kitchen knife straight to the chest. And all I could think about was Gran. Her calling me Billy, again like her mind was stuck in 1973, and how that wasn't even the saddest part. The saddest part was knowing it was only going to get worse, like care home in the back of a van worse. I didn't have a plan. I barely had clean socks. But I knew I couldn't let her keep being treated like some weird inconvenience in the corner of their Pinterest-perfect hell. The following weeks were grim. Like Sunday roast in silence grim. The whole house felt like it was sitting on a fault line, just waiting for someone to sneeze wrong and trigger a full emotional landslide. Mum had fully given up pretending to be supportive. Every time Gran forgot her tea on the hob or asked where Dad was, the real one, not Greg with the hollow eyes, she'd do this little performative sigh and mutter, "We can't keep living like this," like she was starring in her own tragic West End production. Greg, meanwhile, became a full-blown dictator. Started micromanaging Gran like she was a dodgy spreadsheet. Controlled her diet, no more ginger biscuits, I know, criminal. Told her when she could go out read. Never, and even locked her bloody bedroom door once. From the outside. For her own safety, he said, as if imprisoning your mother-in-law is just good safeguarding these days.
I saw it. The door. Locked.
Gran on the other side, quiet as anything. And I swear, for a second, I was about to kick that door in like I was auditioning for Line of Duty. But instead, I just stood there. Fists clenched. Useless again. Abby, my sister, or the ghost formerly known as Abby, completely checked out. Constantly in her room, headphones glued to her ears, living in whatever alternate universe she could stream her way into. She barely looked at me, let alone spoke. Just occasional glances like, please don't make this worse than it already is. And then the whispers started. Late night, under-the-breath whispers that they thought we couldn't hear. But I did. Oh, I bloody did. Words like long-term solution, respite care, nursing home, and the one that made my stomach turn. No point keeping her here. I stood outside the living room door one night, and I heard Mum say it. Straight up. If she can't even remember where the property deeds are, Greg, what's the point? Like Gran was some broken caring they were debating chucking in the bin. And Greg, dear emotionally bankrupt Greg, just said, I'll figure something out. We need to make sure no one calls us unfilial. Unfilial. Who even uses that word unless they're actively plotting something Shakespearean? And then came the holiday. Greg waltzed in at dinner one night and said, we're going on a family trip to Africa. Like he was the host of a game show where the prize is abandonment. Safari, elephants, giraffes. It'll be a bonding experience. I choked on my mashed potatoes. Abby just nodded, like some beaten-down sidekick who'd lost the will to fight. And Gran? She sat there, quietly prodding a boiled carrot, eyes glazed over like she was already halfway gone. What about Gran? I asked, because apparently I'm the only one with a functioning soul. She's coming, Greg said. Smiled like a wax figure. Of course. Of course.
Right.
Because dragging an elderly woman with dementia across continents sounds super manageable. Nothing fishy about that at all. On the day we left, I helped Gran into her old dark green jumper, the one that smelled like her perfume and toast, and noticed she wouldn't let go of Granddad's photo. Clutched it like it was a lifeline. We got her in the car, and she just kept whispering, George, where are we going? I held her hand and told her it'd be all right. Lied right to her face. Because I had no idea where we were going. But I had a sinking feeling it wasn't bloody Africa. Right, so picture this. Heathrow Terminal 5, 7 a.m., and the emotional temperature is somewhere between passive-aggressively furious and on the verge of full breakdown. My stepdad's pacing like he's starring in his own midlife crisis thriller, Mum's snapping at everyone because we'll miss the flight, and my sister, Abby, has permanently fused to her AirPods like their life support. And then there's me. Me and Grandma. Now, Grandma isn't just old. She's memory hole old. Like, calls me Linda on Tuesdays and Susan by Friday. And fair enough, I get it. Age is a bitch. But my stepdad, Martin, the human embodiment of cold tea, has been acting like she's some sort of embarrassing handbag we keep forgetting to leave at home. I'm holding her hand, dragging her at the speed of a confused tortoise through security, while she clutches a photo of Granddad like it's the last Horcrux of her soul. Bless her, she keeps whispering, George? Every few minutes, like he's going to materialize from duty-free between Toblerones and overpriced cologne. We finally get to the departure lounge, which is, shock, absolutely rammed. Every seat is taken by people with giant wheelie bags and questionable airport fashion choices. My stepdad's already muttering under his breath, Mum's rifling through our passports like a madwoman on countdown, and Abby's still doing that teenager thing where she pretends none of us exist. I help Grandma into a chair by the window. Prime tarmac view, because God forbid she sits somewhere that isn't scenic. She's still stroking Granddad's photo like it's a kitten, and honestly, I've got this gnawing in my stomach, like something's properly wrong. And then, airport lady's voice comes over the tannoy, all chirpy and dead inside. Flight BA 247 to Johannesburg is now boarding. Gate 12. Martin, the stepdad, remember, walking passive aggression in a fleece, snaps to attention. grabs his bag like it's a bloody emergency mission. Right, let's go. No smile, no concern, just vibes of leave the dead weight. I go to help Grandma up. He barks. No. She's fine there. I'm sorry, what? I blink. What about Grandma? I ask, already knowing the answer, heart thudding like a bad drum solo. Mum, not even looking up. Worry about yourself, love.
Oh.
Okay, so we're actually doing this. This isn't just one of those messed up family dreams where everyone turns into reptiles. This is real life. I look at Grandma, still staring out the window, still whispering for George, and everything in me wants to scream. They march off, dragging Abby, who doesn't say a word. I just stand there floored. Like, what? We're just dumping Grandma at Heathrow like lost property? What's the plan? Hope she forgets we exist before she dehydrates. And then I realize, they planned this. All the whispering at night. Long-term solution. She won't remember anyway. We can't live like this. They weren't stressed. They were strategizing. The airport shuttle's waiting. Doors open, people piling in like lemmings. Mum waves at me like we're on a jolly school trip. Come on. And I just can't. My feet won't move. My heart's battering my ribs like, hello? Do something, you wet lettuce. I'm not going, I say. Out loud. Like an actual character in a drama, not just the emotionally stunted sidekick. Martin turns, face purple. You what? But I'm already legging it back to Grandma. And there she is, still sat, still small, still alone. I kneel beside her and whisper, Grandma, I'm here. I'm not leaving you. And she looks at me, eyes watery, smiles soft, and says, Linda, I was scared. Not my name. But I don't even care. I hug her so tight I think I might snap her spine, but she holds on just as tight. Above us, the engines of the plane roar to life. I watch it take off without me. And I know I've just blown up my entire life for a woman who sometimes calls me by the dog's name. And I do it again in a heartbeat. Aftermath.
Right.
Now I'm stood in a busy international airport with a frail pensioner, no luggage, no plan, and a hell of a lot of rage. Do I take her back to the house where they were going to abandon her like some tragic, OAP version of Home Alone? Absolutely not. That place reeks of resentment and cheap-scented candles. Then I remember Grandma's brother, Walter. She used to talk about him like he was Father Christmas with a tractor. Apparently, he's got a farm somewhere up north, Yorkshire or Lancashire or some shire that smells like manure and regret. I whip out my phone, hands shaking like I've had 12 coffees and a panic attack. I Google, Harmon's Farm, Knaresborough.
Boom.
There it is. A landline number like it's 1994. I call.
Ring. Ring.
Old man answers. Sounds like he's been chewing gravel. Hello. Hi. I blurt, already sweating. I'm with your sister. Our families tried to dispose of her at an airport. Long story. Can you help? Silence. Then, put the kettle on. I'm on me way. And just like that, we had a plan. Or at least something vaguely less bleak than Heathrow euthanasia. So, there I was, phone in hand, about to make the most awkward call of my life. Ringing up some old bloke named Walter Harmon, who I think is Grandma's brother, but honestly, after all this family drama, who even knows anymore? Walter Harmon here. Who's this?
Right.
Deep breath. Inhale the panic. Hi, I'm Edith's granddaughter. We've had a bit of a situation. Grandma got dumped at Heathrow by my stepdad and mum, and, long story short, I'm bringing her to you. Dead silence on the other end. Then Walter's voice, thick with what I swear was actual feeling. Bring her here. I'll take you both in. Cue me blinking like I just won the emotional lottery. Fast forward. Bus tickets booked. 2 long-distance miracles out of Lincoln to the wilds of Knaresborough. The earliest one leaving that very evening because, honestly, procrastination is for normal people, and we're in full crisis mode. Grandma and I clambered aboard the bus, which smelled like stale crisps and lost dreams. We sat side by side, munching on the driest airport sandwiches ever invented, Why is airport food so tragic, dozing off against each other like two sleep-deprived sad sacks? Dawn at Knaresborough Station. Walter's waiting. Picture a 70-year-old bloke straight out of a vintage farming documentary, with a checkered shirt that's probably seen better decades, and eyes that look like they've lived through the entire century. In his hand, a battered cardboard sign reading, "Edith and Linda." I swear, I half expected a banner and balloons. He spots Grandma and runs to her, wrapping her up in a bear hug that makes me wonder if he's trying to squeeze the sadness out of her. His eyes glisten. "Edith, you had me worried sick," he says, voice all trembly. Grandma looks up, a tiny smile cracking her weathered face. "Walter, when did you get so tall?" I just stand there, feeling all warm and mushy like some sort of Hallmark card, but with more dirt and less optimism. Walter's farm. The place is exactly what you'd imagine. A quaint wooden house surrounded by endless cornfields and apple trees groaning under the weight of their fruit. Red soil everywhere like the earth's been blushing for decades. His wife, Mary, a saint disguised as a woman who probably hasn't had a minute off in 50 years, greets us with tea strong enough to wake the dead and cookies that taste suspiciously like childhood. I spill the whole saga. Mum and stepdad's charming treatment of Grandma, the airport abandonment fiasco, my grand rebel moment. Walter just listens, nodding like the wise man he is. "You did right by her," he says, clapping me on the shoulder. "She stays here now. And you're welcome too if you want." That week on the farm? Like stepping into a parallel universe where kindness exists and no one's judging you for your messy family life. I wake every morning in this tiny attic room, birds squawking like they're auditioning for a nature documentary, and Mary's butter cookies wafting through the hall like edible hugs. Grandma's memory is dodgy, sure, but here she's a queen. Sitting on the porch in an old armchair, clutching Granddad's photo like it's her last lifeline, gazing at the fields with eyes full of forgotten stories. Sometimes she hums folk tunes that sound like they belong to another century, trembling voice and all. I'm roped into farm life too, loading apples and pumpkins onto Walter's ancient truck, manning a little stall in Knaresborough Market. The locals? Absolute gems. Everyone knows Walter. Everyone asks after Edith with genuine smiles, no eye rolls, no sighs. "How's Edith doing, love?" says an elderly flower seller, squinting kindly. "She's all right," I say, dodging the full explanation because honestly, some things are too much for market day banter. Walter just pats my shoulder like, "Don't worry, she's one of us now." Evenings feel like scenes from a cozy period drama. We sit around a wooden table bathed in oil lamp glow. Mary tells stories of Walter's youth, him carting corn across the county, getting into mischief, while he pretends to be offended. Grandma pipes in with half-remembered tales of Granddad, planting wheat, simpler times. I listen, feeling a connection that's real. No pretending, no cold shoulders, just messy family love and all its imperfect glory. But then, ding ding ding, my phone goes ballistic. Messages flooding in from Mum, Stepdad, and Abby, like a barrage of emotional cannonballs. I peek. Hundreds of notifications. My fingers hesitate. Mum's first text. "Linda, where are you and Grandma? Why aren't you home? Call me now." Sounds caring, right?
Huh.
Hours later, tone flips. "What do you think you're playing at? Do you know how worried we are? Bring her back now." Stepdad Martin's texts. All caps rage. "You've humiliated us. If you don't come back, don't bother calling." And Abby? The poor kid's caught in the crossfire. Her texts fewer, but they hit harder. "Mom's been crying. Where are you? I'm worried about you and Grandma." So here I am, on Walter's farm, with Grandma finally safe, phone buzzing like a hornet's nest, and a family meltdown brewing somewhere back in Lincoln. And me, mentally exhausted, sarcastically plotting how to survive it all, one strong cuppa and awkward family dinner at a time. I'm sitting there, phone in hand, fingers hovering like I'm about to send a message that'll either start World War III or at least an epic family meltdown. But nope, I don't reply. Each buzz is like a stab to the heart, reminding me of Lincoln, where I was just a kid trying to be a decent human under my parents' rulebook. Spoiler. That version of me got nowhere. But this time?
Nope.
Not playing that game. They left Grandma stranded at the airport like last week's leftovers, didn't care if she wandered off and got lost forever. They reduced her to a bloody burden, an inconvenience to be dumped. And honestly, I'm not forgiving that. Not a chance. So I switch the phone off, shove it in my pocket, and go help Mary, bless her, with the washing up. She looks at me, all eyes full of quiet kindness, and asks, "You all right, Linda?" I throw her a smile that's as fake as stepdad's promises and say, "Yeah, Mary. Just need a bit of time to breathe." That night, I'm on the porch with Grandma, under a sky so clear you'd think it was photoshopped. Nebraska's version of a starry night, except with more crickets and fewer posh cocktails. She's clutching Granddad's photo like it's the last lifeline she's got, murmuring in that soft, fuzzy way, "George, the boy's grown up so fast, hasn't he?" Yeah, she means me. Though in her head, I'm still Billy, the kid who never quite grew up right. I squeeze her frail hand, those brittle fingers feeling like they could snap if I'm not careful, and think, let them have their rage and blame. Let them stew in their bitterness. But me and Grandma, we're never going back to that bloody house. I stare out at the fields, silver under the moonlight, and feel a resolve bubble up, like the first proper sip of strong tea after a crap day. I've chosen my path. Wherever it leads, I'm not looking back. Walter appears with a mug of hot tea, legend, and asks in his warm, farmer's accent, "What's got you sitting out here all quiet like?" I spill the beans, the messages, the anger, the guilt that sneaks in whenever I think about Abby. He listens without interrupting, then pats my shoulder with that been through worse kind of sympathy. "You did what most wouldn't, Linda. Don't let him shake you. Edith needs you. And you need a home that actually feels like one. This is it." I nod, trying not to choke on my own emotion. "Thanks for taking us in," I whisper, voice rough. Walter smiles and points up. "Look at those stars, bright as ever. Don't let the rubbish dim your light." Days on the farm turn into a slow, gentle rhythm, like the universe's way of giving me a breather. I'm up early helping Walter water crops, wrestle weeds, and haul apples into crates for market. Mary teaches me how to bake butter cookies, the proper kind, the kind Grandma used to bake before life got messy. Edith always did them better than me, Mary says with a wink, but her eyes betray a pinch of sadness when she talks about Grandma.
Grandma?
She mostly lounges on the porch, photo in hand, mumbling bits of old stories and folk songs. Some days she calls me Billy, other days Linda. Either way, it warms the cockles of my heart every time. But peace isn't quite complete. My phone buzzes daily, an unwanted symphony of texts from Mum, Stepdad Martin, and Abby. Mum's first message? Full-on panic mode. "Linda, where are you and Grandma? Why aren't you home? Call me now." Sounds caring, yeah? Not so much. Hours later, the tone flips to pure menace. "What do you think you're playing at? Bring her back now." Stepdad Martin's messages? Basically shouting in digital form. "You've humiliated us. If you don't come back, don't bother calling." And poor Abby, caught between worlds, sends fewer texts, but they sting harder. "I miss you. Mom and Dad, keep fighting. I don't know what to do." I read them all but don't respond. What's the point? Every word drags me back to that dreadful moment at the airport, when they left Grandma alone in a sea of strangers and cold concrete. No, I won't go back. So here I am, on a farm, under real stars, with a family that means something. Phone on silent, heart bruised but stubborn. And honestly, this might just be the start of something better, even if the road there's bloody messy. One afternoon, I was elbow deep in helping Walter mend this bloody fence that's older than the Queen herself. The kind of fence that's basically a historical monument by now, but still needs fixing because, well, nature's a sod. Out of nowhere, Walter calls me over, voice low and serious like he's about to reveal the secrets of the universe, or just warn me there's tea left in the pot, but it's gone cold. Linda, come here for a minute, he says, with that gravelly farm tone that makes you pay attention. I wipe the sweat off my brow. Yes, even in England you can get sweaty when wrestling ancient fences, and follow him into the shed, a place smelling of old wood, hay, and probably a few mysteries best left unsolved. He's rummaging in a corner, making these exaggerated noises like he's starring in some kind of rustic treasure hunt. Then he pulls out this rusty metal box that looks like it survived the Blitz. He opens it and hands me this thick, yellowed envelope, the kind that immediately screams important stuff, but also don't touch with bare hands. This, he says, all serious-like, is from Edith. She asked me to keep it safe after George passed. Cue my hands turning into jelly as I take the envelope. I peek inside and find the farm's property deeds, a savings book with numbers that would make a banker choke on his Earl Grey, and a life insurance policy, all in Grandma's name. I blink at Walter. Grandma gave this to you? He nods, sinking down on a wooden crate, eyes getting all distant like he's looking back through a lifetime of memories. Yeah, she knew her memory wouldn't stick around forever. After George died, she handed it all to me. Said I'd know who to pass it on to when the time came. Reckon that time is now. I'm lost for words. Well, almost. The envelope feels like it weighs a ton, but not because of the paper inside. It's the weight of what it means. Here's this woman, fading fast, but still planning for the future, for me, long before any of this mess. And then I think of my mom and stepdad, their cold questions about her papers, how they started looking at her like she was some sort of inconvenience once the memory started slipping. They saw burden. She thought of others. Walter, keep it, I say, pushing the envelope back towards him. I don't need it. He shakes his head, a faint smile curling up. Linda, your grandma wanted you to have it. Not for the dosh, but 'cause she trusts you. That night, lying in bed, the envelope sits on my bedside table like some cryptic symbol of hope and responsibility. But I don't open it again. I'm thinking about Grandma, the road ahead, and I promise myself this. I'll care for her, not for the papers or the money, but 'cause she's family. The only real family I feel connected to in this mad, mad world. I want her last days to be peaceful, not filled with blame or feeling like some kind of rejected heirloom. A few days later, Grandma surprises me, unusually lucid, like she's pulled herself together for a moment of clarity. She calls me into her room, voice clearer than it's been in ages. Linda, she says, patting the chair by her bedside, sit with me. I sit down and take her hand. Her fingers feel fragile, but there's warmth there, the kind that says you're not alone, no matter what. I don't remember everything, she admits, eyes sharper than usual, but I know you're a good person. You didn't abandon me. I smile, fighting tears like it's a bloody Olympic sport. I'll never abandon you, I whisper, voice thick. She nods, then looks at me with that stubborn old sparkle. Call someone. Lawyer Thompson in town. I want to see him. Surprised but compliant, I arrange it. Mr. Thompson arrives that very afternoon, an elderly gent with white hair like a snowstorm and glasses so round he could probably see into your soul. In Walter's cozy little living room, bathed in the soft glow of an oil lamp, because rustic chic is a thing here, Grandma lays it out clear as crystal. She wants to transfer everything, the farm, the savings, the insurance, to me. He takes care of me, she says, nodding towards Walter then glancing at me. I want him to have it all. I'm stunned, about to protest. This is too much, isn't it? But Walter gives my shoulder a gentle squeeze, the silent signal that this is what Grandma really wants. Thompson scribbles furiously, promises to sort the paperwork within days. As he leaves, Grandma squeezes my hand, whispering, I don't have much time left, Linda, but I'm at peace because of you. And just like that, all the legal mumbo-jumbo and money stuff falls away, and what's left is this quiet, fierce passing of love and trust from her to me. And that, mate, is the kind of family legacy that no lawyer's contract could ever capture. Now, pass the biscuits. I'm drained just telling you this. Right? Buckle up, love, because this next bit, It's the kind of life juggling act that'd have Mary Poppins clutching a flask of gin. Picture me, Linda, the reluctant farm handmaid student, trying to keep it all together in the middle of bloody nowhere, Nebraska, but let's make it proper British, yeah? Somewhere like Kettering or maybe a proper down-to-earth place like Grimsby. Anyway, here's how it all went down. Minus the Hollywood gloss, with all the sarcasm and emotional carnage you could want at 2 a.m. after too many cuppas. So, over the next few months, I somehow managed to keep my head above water, juggling work and studying like some sort of underpaid circus act. Enrolled part-time at the local community college in Kettering, because obviously, I'm ambitious and refuse to settle for just fence mender extraordinaire. Took courses in agriculture, basics of not killing plants, and business management, basically how not to go bankrupt selling apples and pumpkins. By day, I was Walter's unofficial apprentice, hawking fruit and veg at the market, learning to keep accounts without accidentally writing off the entire farm as a loss. At night, I was the full-time carer for Grandma, which meant changing her nappies when she'd forgotten how to use the loo, cheeky Blaine, and reading to her from those dusty old books she once read to me as a kid. One evening, I'm mid-wind in the willows, and she suddenly smiles, a real one, not that I'm confused but trying kind, and murmurs, "George loved this one." I pause, blinking at her. For a split second, Grandma's memory isn't playing hide and seek, and I swear I see a little sparkle there, like Grandpa's still having a cheeky chat through the mist. She even started remembering small stuff now. And then, one afternoon, she insists I learn her butter cookie recipe, the queen of flour disasters if you ask me. "Roll the dough thin, Linda," she says, all teacher why and serious like she's about to hand out detention slips. I laugh, rolling dough that's more like a brick than a biscuit base, and sure enough, they come out looking a bit more charred offering than homemade delight. She takes a bite, closes her eyes, and says with the kind of deadpan I live for, "Just like mine." I nearly choke on my tea. Those fleeting moments? Absolute treasure. One day, Grandma asks me to take a photo of her holding my college acceptance letter. "Keep this one," she says, voice weak, but with that stubborn British grit. "So you remember I'm proud of you." Cue Mary, Walter's wife and part-time baking goddess, taking the picture. There we are, me, grinning like I've just survived a zombie apocalypse, and Grandma, looking at me like she's trying to tattoo this moment onto her fading memory. But, as you'd expect with this whole life business, the good bits got fewer and the bad bits started crashing the party, like uninvited guests. Grandma's health took a nosedive. Sleeping more than a teenager on half a bag of crisps, speaking less, and those lucid moments became as rare as a sunny day in Manchester. But I refused to wallow, not yet anyway. I was there every morning, checking she'd slept all right, changing nappies before breakfast. I'm basically the NHS now, making sure meds were on schedule. She mostly sat in her wheelchair, eyes clouded but somehow still scanning the cornfields like she was hunting for Grandpa in the breeze rustling the leaves. One spring morning, I wheeled her outside to soak up the sunshine because apparently even farming life needs a bit of vitamin D. She held my hand, said nothing, but squeezed gently, like a secret handshake between us. Those little moments? They kept me going when everything else felt like a disaster zone. Meanwhile, I stopped giving a toss about the endless stream of messages from my mom and stepdad. The blame, the threats, the "how dare you" rants. It all felt like background noise now, the kind you tune out because you've got better things to do, like not losing your sanity. Abby, my sister, still messaged occasionally, though her texts were like signals from a ship lost between our family storms. "Are you okay?" she'd ask. "How's Grandma?" I kept my replies brief. Part don't want to start a war, and part, I'm just trying to survive here. Then came my graduation day, a milestone I honestly didn't think I'd hit back when I was stuck in that miserable Lincoln flat, dreaming of escape. I stood in front of the cracked mirror in my attic room, draped in my cap and gown like a reluctant royal, feeling like I'd won and lost all at once. I'd bloody done it. Graduated community college with grades decent enough to dream about running the farm someday, or maybe starting a little business that didn't involve gluing fences back together. But the joy was complicated. Because Grandma's time was ticking down like a dodgy bomb, and all I could think was how she deserved better than this messy, chaotic life. So yeah, that's where we were, balancing on the edge of hope and heartbreak, with a fistful of sarcasm and a heart full of let's just keep going. And if you ever feel like life's a bit much, just remember, at least you're not rolling burnt butter cookies at 2 a.m. while trying not to lose your marbles. So there I was, wheeling Grandma, or Edith if you're feeling formal, onto the campus where my graduation ceremony was kicking off. Picture it, a sunny day in Norwich, not a cloud in sight, and me in this ridiculous cap and gown that made me look like I'd just wandered off a Hogwarts set but forgot my magic wand. Grandma was wrapped in her trademark dark green jumper, the one that's seen more years than the council estate we grew up on, her eyes all foggy but softening with this tiny, faint smile. She looked at me and whispered, all delicate like, "Linda?" I dropped to one knee beside her wheelchair, clutching her hand like it was a lifeline through the madness. "I bloody did it, Grandma," I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking because, let's be honest, I'm about as emotionally stable as a Jenga tower in an earthquake. She gave me this slow nod, that smile blooming just a little wider, like she knew the effort it took for me to get here, even if her memory was playing hide and seek with the details. I nudged a student nearby to snap a photo of us. In it, I'm standing behind her, hands on her shoulders, grinning like I'd just survived a day without drama, while she stares into the camera with these eyes that, for a second, were bright as a bonfire on bonfire night, like she was desperate to clutch that moment before it vanished into the ether. That photo? Yeah, it's still in my wallet, right next to my bus ticket and the emergency chocolate bar stash. The ceremony zipped by in a blur of applause, caps flying like it was a rugby match, and me thinking, well, this is it. I survived. Walter and Mary showed up, all hugs and warm words about how Grandpa and Grandma would be proud, bless their cotton socks. But my eyes kept drifting back to Edith, small, fragile, looking like she wanted nothing more than to just bugger off home and put her feet up. And bugger me a week later, that's exactly what happened. It was one of those quiet mornings where the sun sneaks in through the curtains like it's trying not to wake you up, very polite, very British. I went to check on Grandma like I always did, and when I touched her hand, I just knew. She was lying there, eyes closed, face peaceful, as if she'd finally found Grandpa waiting for her at the pearly gates or wherever you reckon they hang out. And of course, that framed photo of George was still clutched tight in her hand, that stubborn old thing, even in her last moments. I sat beside her bed, took her hand in mine, and let the tears fall, not the full-on sobbing like a scene from EastEnders, but those quiet, sneaky ones that stream down your face when you're trying to be strong but failing spectacularly. I'd kept my promise. She wasn't alone when it mattered most. I rang Walter and Mary, who came over quietly, like they were tiptoeing around a sleeping dragon. Mary's voice cracked as she said, "She went peacefully." Walter just put a hand on my shoulder, said nothing, but honestly, that touch said everything, like I'm here. "You did good." We held the funeral on the farm, right under that ancient oak tree where Grandma used to perch and watch the fields like she was reading the tea leaves of life. It was simple, just me, Walter, Mary, and a handful of neighbors from Kettering who'd known her as more than just a forgetful old lady. I didn't invite my mum or stepdad. Not because I was throwing a tantrum. Well, maybe a bit, but mostly because they didn't belong in this chapter of Grandma's story. Abby sent a bouquet of white daisies with a note. "Linda, I'm sorry. Hope Grandma's at peace." I laid the flowers on her grave, but didn't text back.
Didn't have the heart for it yet.
Standing by that little patch of earth, I thought about everything Grandma had taught me. Not with fancy words or lectures, but with how she loved fiercely, lived stubbornly, and kept going even as the world slipped through her fingers. I swore I'd live in a way that honored her. Messy, chaotic, maybe a bit unhinged, but true to who I was. The days after felt like straddling two worlds. On one side, Kettering, where I'd found peace with Walter, Mary, and the ghosts of Grandma's memories. On the other, Lincoln, my old life, my family, my past, now feeling as distant as a canceled train on a foggy morning. But I knew I had to go back. Not to make peace, because let's be real, some things just don't get fixed with a cuppa and a stiff upper lip. No, this was to confront, to stare down my mom and stepdad, to see what their faces looked like when they realized I'd chosen Grandma over them. So I packed a few bits of clothes, my trusty wallet with that graduation photo tucked inside, a reminder of why I was doing this, and as much courage as a Brit can muster after a lifetime of passive-aggressive silences. Walter came with me to the bus station, his eyes all worried, but full of that quiet strength he always carried. "You don't have to do this, Linda," he said, pressing a hand to my shoulder like he was passing on some secret strength. "But if you're set on it, stay strong, yeah? And remember, Kettering's always your home." I nodded, hugged him tight, the kind of hug that says thank you without having to say it, then climbed onto that bus, feeling like I was stepping straight into a bloody storm I wasn't sure I could weather. And that's where we leave it for now, me, armed with sarcasm, a stubborn heart, and a bus ticket to face the family circus. Because sometimes the hardest journeys are the ones home. The 3-hour bus ride from Grantham to my mum and stepdad's flat felt like I'd been sentenced to purgatory on a rattling old route master with no Wi-Fi and the guy next to me sniffing suspiciously. I stared out at endless fields of muddy brown and lifeless hedgerows, dotted with the occasional council house that looked like it had been through one too many Christmases without a lick of paint. Every scruffy hedge and muddy puddle yanked me back to memories of Grandma, Edith, bless her, sitting on that ancient garden bench, humming some daft folk tune or squeezing my hand like I was still Billy, her little boy from decades ago. I kept wondering, honestly, did Mum and Stepdad ever really care for her, or was it all just a bit of posh pretending? You know, the kind where they look like they care, but only if there's a camera nearby. When I finally trundled through the front door of their 2 Up 2 Down in Lincolnshire, it was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I just grew too big for it, both literally and metaphorically. The once neatly trimmed lawn was more weeds than grass, the white paint peeling like it was giving up on life. Inside, Mum and Stepdad sat in the living room, looking about 50 years older than they should have been. Stepdad, Martin, who used to be this towering bloke with a stare that could freeze fire, now slumped in his chair like he'd given up halfway through life. His thinning hair was peppered with gray like he'd lost a fight with a salt shaker. Mum, Lisa, looked like she'd been crying for weeks, hair a mess, mascara streaked down her cheeks like she'd watched every episode of EastEnders back-to-back and bawled through the lot. Abby, my little sister, was off somewhere in Sheffield, probably avoiding all of this drama like the absolute legend she is. I shuffled in, and Mum and Stepdad looked at me like I was some sort of alien who'd just landed. Nobody said a word at first. The silence was thick enough to cut with a butter knife, and honestly, it was almost impressive. Finally, Mum broke the quiet, standing up like she was about to give me a hug, but then thought better of it, arms dropping like they'd lost their purpose. "Linda," she said, voice cracking like a bad actor in a soap. "Where have you been? And where's Grandma?" I took a deep breath, the kind that comes when you're about to say something nobody wants to hear but needs saying anyway. "Grandma passed away 2 weeks ago," I said, flat as a cold cup of tea. "She died in Kettering, where she was loved." Mum crumpled into a chair like a popped balloon, hands covering her face, as if she was trying to hold back a flood. "I didn't want this," she whimpered. "I thought it was for the best." Stepdad Martin said nothing, just sat there, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor like they were having a very serious staring contest. I stared right back, waiting for something, an explanation, a curse, hell, even a grovel, but nope. Just silence and a sigh that said, "Words are pointless in it." I told them everything. The bus ride, Walter's farm, Grandma's last days, how she smiled at my graduation, how she held my hand and called me a good person, despite everything. No shouting, no finger-pointing, just the cold, hard facts laid bare. Each sentence felt like stabbing a knife, not to hurt them, but so they'd actually understand what they'd done. Mum broke down again, whispering broken apologies. "I'm sorry. I never thought it would come to this." Then Stepdad Martin, finally raising his head, voice hoarse like he'd been through the wars, said, "Enough, Lisa." And then, for the first time ever, I saw a glint in his eyes, a flicker of something real, maybe regret. "You did what I couldn't," he said. I didn't say a word back. That was all I needed. I didn't stay long after that. No one was ready for the messy truth or whatever fragile piece they hoped to pretend existed. I just wanted them to know that Grandma had died in peace, not alone, and that I'd chosen to fight for her, even if it meant breaking their little perfect family bubble. As I headed for the door, Mum grabbed my hand, voice barely above a whisper. "Linda, you can come back whenever you want. This is still your home." I gave her a smile, the kind that says thanks but no thanks. Because this wasn't home anymore. My home was in Kettering, with Walter, Mary, and the messy, beautiful memories of Grandma. So, back in Kettering, yeah, that charming little town where the most exciting thing is the chippy doing a banging battered sausage, I decided to start over. Not just because I needed to, but because Grandma left me a bit of dosh. Not a fortune, mind you, but enough to cover college fees and open a tiny coffee shop near the community college. I called it Memory Lane. Cute, right? Like a subtle reminder that I'm basically running a shrine to Grandma, but with decent coffee and fewer candles. The shop wasn't anything fancy, just a couple of wooden tables that looked like someone found them in a skip and polished them up, a small counter that probably held more dust than cups at times, and walls covered with old, slightly crooked photos. There was Grandma, standing proud in front of the farm, looking like she'd just caught a whiff of fresh air and was still suspicious about it. Then there was us, me in my graduation gown. Yes, I finally bloody did it, with Grandma beaming like she'd just won the lottery. And Walter, grinning like a kid with his apple-laden truck, probably thinking, "Don't let the city lot see me like this. I'll never live it down." Every time I looked at those pictures, I swear I could feel her smirking back at me, like, "Well done, love. You did good." It's weird, right? How a few photos can hold a presence stronger than most people you meet in real life. The coffee shop took off quicker than I expected. Students loved the smell of the roasting beans, because who doesn't want their morning caffeine fix? The butter cookies I'd mastered thanks to Mary, bless her soul, and apparently, I'd become the unofficial Grandma storytelling hotspot. Now, I only told the nice stories. You know, the ones where Grandma baked like a champion and sang folk songs that would probably get you arrested if you played them in a pub these days. The messy bits, like the airport drama or my family's emotional dumpster fire, those were locked away in my not-ready-to-share box. Every weekend, I made a point of visiting the local care home. I'd bring Grandma's old books, the ones she used to read to me when I was a kid. I'd read to the residents, swapping stories about the farm, Grandpa George, and those blazing hot summers spent chasing chickens or pretending to be farmers when I could barely tell a spade from a pitchfork. Some of them listened intently, some laughed, and a few even squeezed my hand like they knew the love behind my words. One sweet old dear told me once, "You're like my daughter, always caring for others." I smiled, but honestly, inside I was like, blimey, I hope I'm not turning into Grandma already. Still, I figured if I'm going to inherit anything from her, it might as well be that stubborn care and the ability to whip up a decent batch of butter cookies. Then one day, Abby, yes, my little sister, rang me. Her voice was this weird mix of scared and sorry. "Desmond," she said, and I could practically hear her biting her lip. "I'm sorry. I wasn't brave like you. I was scared of Mum and Martin, of making the wrong choice." I just listened. Honestly, at this point, I felt more sorry for her than annoyed. She's still caught in that invisible cage our parents built, the one made of guilt trips and passive-aggressive dinners. "It's all right, Abby," I said, trying to sound calm even though my brain was on permanent what a mess mode. "You'll find your own way. Take all the time you need." She cried a bit on the phone, which, of course, did a number on my cold, sarcastic exterior, and I promised we'd meet up. But not in Lincoln, no way. When she's ready, she can come to Kettering. I'm not ready to dip back into that madness just yet. So, that's where my story ends, or maybe it just pauses for a cuppa. But it's not a sad one, honestly. I learned that family isn't just about sharing DNA. It's about the people who show up, who stick by you when the world turns its back. Grandma taught me that, not through grand speeches or perfect moments, but through how she lived and loved, even as her memory slipped away like sand through fingers. I opened memory lane not just to make a few quid, but to keep her close, keep those memories alive. Every time I read to someone elderly, every time I stare out at the muddy fields around Kettering, I know Grandma's there, probably shaking her head at my terrible baking, but smiling all the same. If you ask me if I have regrets, honestly, I say no. I chose her. She chose me. And that, my loves, is the biggest, most precious gift anyone's ever given me. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my ramble. Now, go hug someone before it's too late. And if you're anything like me, pour yourself a cuppa. You're gonna need it.